Manipal University, Jaipur. He is in third year of Bachelor's of Computer Science, and he is technical lead of GDSC in his campus. He also make custom ROMs with me in Evolution X, Android custom ROMs we build, and he is also the app developer for our very well known tech burner YouTuber. And there are many apps on the Play Store as well built by him. He is very great Android developer. I would like to invite Hardik Srivastav to turn on his mic and deliver his knowledge to all of you. Hello, Hardik.
Hello everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So I guess we can start the session now, or are we going to wait for some more people to join?
Yeah, I think we should start as we have some time
Sure.
constraint today.
Sure. So hello everyone. As Hemant introduced me, I am from Manipal University, Jaipur, and I am the technical lead in my GDSC. And and I'll be talking about Recyclerview, and I'll be giving an introduction as to how to use it, why do we use it, and what purpose does it serve. So let me share my screen. So I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Mm, yeah, ASD
Yeah.
Recyclerview is there.
Yep. So let's start off with our session for now. So first things first, I'll give you an overview as to what Recyclerview is. So in almost all of your Anode applications, there is going to be a scenario wherein you will need to create a scrollable feed or a scrollable layout. So for example, if you are going to develop a social media type of application, you need to have a feed which would display different types of content in it. Or say, for example, you need to develop a chatting application. You will need to implement a scrollable section wherein everyone's messages are going to be seen. So in those scenarios, we make use of this view called Recycler view. So Recycler view, basically it makes it very easy to efficiently display large sets of data in our Android apps. And Recycler view is also very simple to use if you are going to see what functionality it serves. So you basically supply the data which you want to show, and you define how every single item is going to look. And the Recycler view library would internally dynamically create whatever elements it needs to create in order to display those data. Right. So next thing, like, so why do we call it Recycler view? So like, because if you have been doing Android development, there is also something called a list view, which serves the same purpose. So Recycler view, as the name implies, basically recycles the individual elements internally. So for example, if any particular layout or a view scrolls off screen, that means that it is not visible to the user. Recycler view would not destroy the component or remove it from memory. Instead, it would just modify the data it handles in order to like create new and separate views. So this essentially improves the performance, since we are not calculating and inflating new layouts at every single time. It improves the responsiveness, and again, it reduces the power consumption of the app as a whole. So let's see. So let's see as to what we'll be building today. So this is the application which we'll be building. I'll also show you a live demo of it. Let me just connect my phone. So I'll open this up. Right. So this is the Anode application which we'll be building today. So this is going to be a very simple feed wherein each item contains an icon. It contains a title text, and it also has a number below it. And these values are being set by random at runtime. So this is the feed which we are going to develop. So let's start off. So before we actually start coding and setting up our project, there are four basic things which you need to understand before we start working with the Recyclerview. So the first thing is item layout and its accompanying view holder. So the item layout is essentially the resource layout that is going to be displayed in the item. So right here, if you will notice, the layout or the list is essentially same. Like we have an image view, we have two text views, and the data is only being changed for every single item, but the base layout is same. So this is the item layout. So item layout describes how the item in the list is going to look, whereas the view holder class describes the item view, and it contains the metadata which is used by Recyclerview internally to like handle stuff. Then secondly, we have something called model data class. So this is the data class which is going to hold the data for the individual items, and the data, and this serves the purpose of actually like supplying the data to the Recyclerview to display. Then thirdly, we have the adapter class, and the adapter class is by far the largest class, and it is the brains behind the whole Recyclerview. It handles the logic, it handles the inflation, it handles the display of elements, it handles almost everything there is to Recyclerview. And adapters provide binding from the app specific data, that is the, or like whatever data the user wants to display to the application, and it passes on to the views that are going to be internally displayed by the actual operating system itself. So the last thing which we have is the layout manager. So layout manager defines as to how the items would be positioned on screen. So for example, if you want to have a feed wherein every single item is one below the another, you'll define that type of layout manager. If you want to have something like a grid or a column format, you will need to define the layout manager according to that use case. So the layout manager defines the how the feed is going to look. So let's start off with our Android Studio project. So this is my Android Studio. I'll create a new project. I'll choose empty activity, and I'll give the name as recycler sample. You can obviously name it whatever you want to, and I'll leave the rest of the properties as it is, since I do not want to change it. I'll hit finish, and it would open up the project in Android Studio. So let's wait for a while. So but in the meantime, I'll also show you the individual items which are present. So for our Recyclerview list, if you will notice, so as I was mentioning, this is the individual item which we have. So if you will pay attention to it, we have an image view that is going to contain the icon. We have a text view that is going to contain the title. We have another text view that is below the first one, and it is going to contain some random number. And all of these three views are being contained in a constraint layout. So the constraint layout is essentially the root layout for our three views. So let's head back to Android Studio. Yeah, so the project has finished syncing. Now, before I start writing any code, I'll head over to the build.gradle file and enable view binding. So view binding essentially for people who don't know or are new to Android or development. So view binding basically makes it very simple to make use of the resource file in your code. So also, like previously, you need to write something like find view by ID in order to like make use of the views, but view binding makes it very simple in the development phase. So I'll show you also how we use it. This is our main.xml. This is our main activity code. So first of all, I'll start off by developing the actual item layout for my list. So this is the item layout as I previously explained. So I'll go to layout folder. I'll choose new layout resource file, and I'll name it something like item sample. So this is going to be my layout for my Recyclerview. I'll change this to pixel for Excel because I like that particular format. And right, so first things first, before I actually start adding any views, let's add the different icons which we have. So if you'll notice, we have the Android icon, we have another snowflake type of icon. We also have this ADV icon, which is being displayed in our list. So I'll add these three particular assets in my project. So I'll right click on the drawable folder. I'll go to new vector asset, and right here I'll just choose whatever icon I want to include. So let's see what we have. So I'll add this AC unit one, I'll rename this to IC_AC. I'll do finish. Then let's add this reaction icon. I'll rename this to IC reaction. Then let's add our last icon. So let's see what we have. So let's add this account circle one. Right. So I have all of my 3 icons in my project now. So let's start developing the actual item layout now. So again, so we have this image view writer. So I'll go to the palette and I'll drag and drop an image view to my layout, and I'll choose this particular ace icon for now. I'll resize it to be about 42 dp, since that would make it a bit larger. So I'll resize it to 42 dp, and I'll add some padding to it. So from the left side, let me give it 16 dp. From the top, I'll give it about 8 dp. So our image view is now presented in our layout. Then let's add these 2 text views which you have. So I'll drag and drop a text view, and I'll drag and drop my second text view. So inside this, on the first text view, I'll place this to be on the right side of my image view. I'll give it about 8 dp of padding. I'll also constrain it to the top, and I'll give it about 8 dp of padding again. Let's also increase its text size so it is a bit differentiated. I choose 20 sp, and I'll also constrain it from the right side, since what I want to do is I want my text or the title text to take whatever free has on the particular screen. So I'll constrain it to from the right, and I'll change its layout width from wrap content to 0 dp, which is also known as a match constraint. So what match constraint is going to do is that it would allow the text to take whatever space is present in our layout when we are going to run it on a physical Android device. Right, so I'll set the right side padding to be about 16 dp, and I'll also do the same thing with my second text view. So I'll concentrate it below this. I'll give this a top padding of about 4 units. Then I'll make this on the right side of the icon. Again, this would be 8 dp, and I'll also concentrate to the right side. Give this about 16 dp padding, and I'll do the same thing with it as well. Right, so our basic layout, item layout is done. So one thing which you need to make sure now is that the root layout needs to be wrap content. The height of the root layout needs to be wrap content instead of match width, because as of right now, this singular item is going to take up the entire screen, right? And we do not want to do that. If we'll do that, only like what our list would contain is like these 3 values, then this like whole empty space, and when the user would scroll again, it would show these 3 values, and like again a large amount of free space. So we don't want to do that. So for that, I'll choose a root layout, that is a constraint layout from the component tree, and I'll resize the height from layout height to match parent to wrap content. Right. This so now essentially our root height is like this much only, and that is what we want. So I'll also add some padding on the bottom side, so ATP, so that looks clean. And before moving forward, I'll also add some proper IDs to it. This would be IMG sample. This can be PX title. This can be PX subtitle. Right. So now my item layout is complete. And before moving on, I'll just see if anyone has any question as of right now. No?
Hardik, there is one in the chat.
I actually cannot see the chat, so can you just like read it for me?
Yeah. He is having doubt in view binding.
Okay.
Like,
I'll explain view binding when I'll set up the view hold class, since that would make more sense then. Any other question? I guess no. So I'll move forward. Right.
yeah.
So let's create the adapter class now. So I'll go to my project directory. I'll click on write new Kotlin class, and let's name this as oh right. So before we actually make the view holder or the adapter class, we need to make the data class now. So since the data class would essentially contain whatever data we want to display in the icon and in these two text fields. So I'll right click, I'll choose new, and I choose Kotlin class/file. Let's name this as sample data. Right, so now I have a sample data class. So since we only need this class to like store the three properties to display, what we can do instead of creating like a normal class, we can add the keyword data before the class keyword. So that would convert it to a data class. And what a data class means in Kotlin means is that this particular class is only going to be used to store data inside it, and it is not going to contain any form of logic in it, right? And that is also what we want in our case here. So the data class is serves the perfect purpose. So I'll add my three properties. So let's first would be let's see icon. So now icons in Android are actually an integer resource. So whatever value exists inside the res folder, every single property and every single file gets assigned an integer ID when we compile our application. So for example, this IC_AC would get some random integer at like 1011. Then IC_account can get some random at like 932. So that happens on compile time. So essentially, if we want to make use of these resources in our code, we need to specify the data type as integer. So I'll just set the data type as integer here. And for our title, it is going to be a string. And for our subtext, it is also going to be string. So this just completes our sample data class. And these are all the three parameters which we need to have. Now, next thing, let's move forward and create the adapter and the view holder now. So I'll choose new. I'll choose Kotlin class/file. Let's name this file as sample adapter. Right. So normally what we do is that since we need to create a view holder for our adapter class, we try to or we choose to make the view holder class inside the inside our adapter class itself. So that way the code is a bit more organized, and we know that okay, like if we are going to make use of this view holder is only going to be used in this particular adapter class itself. So that is also what I'm going to do here. So I'll write inner class sample view holder. And so the view holder, as I said here, the view holder describes an item view layout. So the view holder also needs to get a reference of the actual view itself. And in our case, since our layout for the item view is named as item_sample, we'll need to write something like like first of all, let's name the variable name. So let's name it as item, and the data type would be item sample binding. So how like I'll explain view binding quickly. So how view binding works is that for every layout you have in your project, so right here, if we are having activity_main.xml, and we are having like a constraint layout and a text view inside it, Android Studio would generate a class for the layout as well, and it would be named something like activity main binding. So that is what the name of the class is going to be, and that particular class is going to have variables and fields, which is going to correspond to whatever view we have right here. So for our item_sample.xml file, Android Studio generated a class called item sample binding. Right. So that is how the naming scheme follows. And I'll also show you how we can make use of this item variable right here in a minute. So let's complete the prototype for our class for our view holder. So this would extend Recyclerview dot view holder. Let me import Recyclerview dot view holder. And we also need to pass the item root inside our default view holder itself. So I'll write item dot root. So this is the structure for our view holder class. This is how it would extend the existing view holder class internally. And I'll change this to be private val, so that we can make use of the item variable inside function. So let's create a binding function. So the bind function would essentially attach the data to our layout. So I name this as bind, and the data would be, let's say, something like sample data, and the type is going to be sample data. Right, so this is our bind function. So here what we'll do is that we'll attach data to item. So whatever data we are going to get in the sample data variable, we are going to take that data and we are going to attach that to our item sample binding variable. So, and that is named as item. Right. So right here, what I'll do is I'll write item, that is our binding variable, dot. So right, as you can see, we just got access to the 3 different views which we have in our layout. So right here we have img underscore sample, tx underscore title, and tx underscore subtitle. So right here, if I write item dot, I also just got access to those 3 views. So I can directly write like img sample, and this is my image view of that particular item layout. So I'll write item dot set image resource, and I'll write sample data dot icon, and this would set this up. I'll again write item dot tx title, and I'll set the data of it as sample data dot title, and for the last part I'll write tx subtitle dot text is equal to sample data dot subtext. So this essentially completes my bind function. So, and just like that, I am actually attaching the data in my sample data variable to the item variable right here. Right, so this completes our sample view holder. And now let's move on to the most important part, that is our sample adapter class itself. So right here, just like my sample view holder, this class is also going to extend the Recyclerview.adapter class. But before that, we also need to supply some form of data which the adapter will display. So, and since we are going to display multiple items, that data is going to be in the form of either like an array list, it could either be an array, it could be any form of list which you want to display. So the most common data we use is array list. So I'll just write private val, and I'll name the variable as data, and this is going to be an array list, and the array list item is going to be of the type sample data. So essentially my data variable is going to contain a list of items, and where every single item is of the type sample data. Right, so this is my constructor for sample adapter class, and this particular class is going to extend Recyclerview.adapter. Now we need to tell our adapters what view holder it needs to make use of. So I'll write something like sample view holder, and it would automatically fill the path for us. And since this is a class which we are extending, we also need to write the brackets in order to fix syntax. Now, if you'll see, I got this red squiggly line, which is essentially telling us that we need to implement some functions for the class to work. So I'll just select all by pressing Ctrl A, and I'll hit OK. So now we got these 3 basic functions which we need to implement in order to make use of the sample adapter class, and I'll explain these one by one. So first things first, we have this get item count function. Now get item count function basically returns the size or the number of items which are going to be displayed on screen. So essentially we just want to display all the items in our data variable. So right here we'll write something like return data dot size, since data is exactly what we are going to display. Then the on bind view holder variable is called when the actual item layout is created, and at what position it is created. So Recyclerview would essentially create an instance of the sample view holder. It would inflate our layout right here, and it would pass that layout to us, and accordingly it would also tell us as to what position that layout is going to be displayed. And this is where we need to call our bind function in order to display the data. So first things first, since I have access to the position of the item in my list, I'll get the data. So I'll write something like val b equal to data position, So my D variable is going to contain a reference to the data which is present in the data variable. Then I'll write something like holder dot bind, and I'll pass the inner. So what we just did is that we used the data list, and we got the position from it, and then again we just use the holder variable which we got in order to bind the data to it, right? So this is going to attach the data of that particular item in the layout itself. I'll also just simplify this and directly write data position and remove this line. This is going to serve the same thing. Now, on create view holder. Now, this function is going to be called when the recycler view actually wants to create the layout for the this item to be displayed. And obviously, this is going to be the type sample view holder, because that is our view holder class. So I'll write something like a return sample view holder, and inside sample view holder, we need to inflate our item sample binding variable. So I'll write item sample binding not inflate, and inside this I need to make a reference to the layout inflator class. So I'll write layout inflator dot from parent dot context, and this would be something like parent comma false. So these, like the parent variable and attached parent, so they're separate purposes, but for most of the part, writing something like this is going to get the job done, so you do not need to worry about it. Now, with all of this code, we just created a very basic sample adapter for our list, and this is like almost the least amount of code which you need to write in order to make the recycler view function. But once you are done with it, you can easily add or make changes to the code in order to do or display whatever type of data or whatever type of logic you want to implement. So once again, I'll just head back to the chat, and like, are there any new questions?
Not yet, but sorry to interrupt. Due to some technical issue, I think we will have to shift to the other platform. I have got again the notification like meeting is going to end in next 15 minutes.
So
I
I
think
guess
we
we
will
should
have
do it right now then.
yeah. I have shared the meeting link in the description chat also, and Hardik, I have sent you in the
Yeah. So
WhatsApp.
I'll leave here and I'll join the Google Meet.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Those who can't see the link, I am sharing my screen. You can start joining there. Here below is the link.
Right. Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, Hardik, you were audible. Actually, my notification was there, and I was just finding where is my mic button.
I guess we should wait for like 5 to 6 minutes so that everyone
Yeah.
can join this. Yeah.
Anyone who is on Microsoft Teams, they can start joining the Google Meet. We were not sure about the participants who are going to join, so we didn't created the Google Meet link before. But suddenly it started popping out like meeting will end soon.
Can you please send the link in the WhatsApp group?
Okay, I'll
Also,
share.
in the meanwhile, if anyone like has any questions or they want to talk about it, feel free to like ask or write in
Hemant and Hardik, just mute yourself in the Microsoft now. It is creating echo.
Like think of a situation where you have like 5 6 views or like 10 to 15 views. That makes it very tedious because you need to write find view by id for every single line and for every single action which you wanted to perform. So Google introduced this concept called view binding, where essentially what happens is that instead of manually writing the find view by id, like instead of you the developer writing the find view by id logic and getting access to those views, the class is automatically generated which the developer can use. So right here, as you can see, Android Studio generated this class called item sample binding, and the item sample binding already had three variables: img sample, tx title, and tx subtitle. So img sample corresponds so if I like hit control and I'll press on img sample, it would automatically open the image view for the layout. So these three variables are essentially my image view, text view, and another text view in my item underscore sample.xml class. And this is how the overall process of making use of the views, setting data, updating data is simplified with the view binding. Sample data, yeah. So since like let me open this presentation. Yeah. So every single item is going to have is having three types of data, right? One is the image view, the icon which we need to display, the title, and the number which is being displayed here. So we need to have some class or something which can essentially store these three data for our item, right? So for that, what we did is we made a class and defined the three properties inside it. And this is, I guess, some oops concept. I think it was encapsulation. So encapsulation, yeah. So encapsulation is how like wrapping up the data under a single unit. So this is essentially encapsulation for our data. So, and since in Kotlin we have different features, so since all we need to do is have a class which can store these three properties, we use of the keyword data, and it essentially converts our simple like normal class to a data class. And this data class is not going to contain any form of logic. Like there is no additional code for defining like how to get the data, how to get the title, how to get the subtext. It just has our three different variables, and the sample data object is going to contain these three properties when we make use of this class, right? So I guess I'll restart from the adapter part. So right, so we just finished making our sample adapter class. Let's see as to how we can actually make use of the adapter class to create this particular field. So in my activity underscore main.xml file, I'll remove this existing text view, and from my palette, I'll drag and drop a recycler view. So now what I'll do is, like, now that we have our recycler view, I'll make it so that the recycler takes all of the available screen space. So I'll constraint it something like this: 0 0 on the bottom, 0 as well, 0, and I'll change the width and height to be 0 dp, as I want the recycler to take all of the screen space. And I'll also attach some ID to it. So that would be IRV_sample. Now in my main activity class, again, the first things first which I'll do is remove the r.layout part with the view binding process. So I'll make a variable private latent var binding, and that would be of the type activity main binding. Here I'll write binding equal to activity main binding dot inflate layout inflator, and I change this to be binding dot. Now, for again, if you have any confusion or any difficulty regarding the binding part, there is a lot of documentation available. There are code labs present, and like I won't be going very deep regarding the binding part since I need to focus on Recyclerview as it is. Right. So let's see as to what we need to do now. So we have our sample data, we have our adapter. Let's piece together everything and create the list which we want to display. So first of all, what I'll do is I'll make an empty list. So I'll write something var data equal to array list of, and the type is going to be sample data. So essentially, I just made an empty list inside the variable data. And what I'll do is that I'll add 25 items in the data variable. So for that, I'll write repeat 25. So this is similar to the for loop where I would be writing something like for I equal to 0, I less than 25, I plus plus, and repeating my code for about 25 times. The repeat loop is similar to that. And right here, I'll write data dot add, and I'll make an object of the sample data. So for now, let's choose the icon to be IC_account, the title to be something like sample title, and the subtext to be, let's say, 123. So what essentially this is going to do is that it is going to create an object of sample data with these three specific values inside the data variable. Right. So the data variable is going to have about like 25 similar objects inside it. As of now, I'll show you how to add the randomization logic afterwards. So now that we have our data, let's also make the object of our adapter class. So I'll write val adapter, which is going to be sample adapter, and inside it I'll pass my data. Right. So this is how I simply create the object for my adapter. And now I'll attach this adapter to the actual Recyclerview present here. So I'll write binding.rv sample, which is my Recyclerview, and I'll write adapter equal to adapter. So this particular adapter variable is our variable. Change this to sample adapter for clarity. Sample adapter. Yeah. And now comes the time where I'll talk about layout manager. So let's see. So right here, all of our items are being displayed one below the another. So in Android, this is called linear layout. So all of the items are being displayed linearly, one below the another. So here, since I want to do that as well, I'll write binding or rv sample, and I'll have my layout manager equal to linear layout manager. This is going to take the context, so I'll just write this. So now the layout for our Recyclerview is going to be linear layout manager, and it is going to display the items one below the another. And let's see. So almost all of the code is done. I'll go ahead and connect my device, and I'll run this. So let's hope it works. I'll press the compile button. I'll also start sharing my phone screen. So let's see, it is compiling right now. Yeah. So as you can see, we just had our Recyclerview loaded, and this is displaying like 25 items, and every single item is essentially the same. Each is having sample title, 123 and this particular account. But still, we can scroll it up and down, and Android gives this very nice animation of telling the user that we have reached the end of the limit. So I can go up and it will show this. I can go down and it will show something like this, right? So let's add the this randomization to it. So like every item is having a separate title. Like we have Android, hello, Android, GDSC. We have 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, something like that. So for that, what I'll do is I'll change the logic in this part right here. Let's see as to how many different resources I have for my drawable. So let's make a variable for val icons, and this icons variable is going to contain the IDs for all of the different vector assets we added. That would be array of r.drawable.icac, r.drawable.ic account, r.drawable.ic reaction. So icons variable is containing all the three IDs for all of the three resources which we added. Then let's make something like titles equal to array of, and this is going to contain all the title, different types of title which we want to show. So I'll write sample, I'll write GDSC, I'll write Android, I can also write Google. Let's select 4 are enough, I guess. Then for the text part, for the number part, so this is essentially displaying numbers from 1 to 10 at random. So this is a cropped screenshot. It is only displaying like 7 at max. But for defining a range of values, what we can do is write something like 1 dot dot 10. So this essentially creates a range of values in Kotlin, and this particular range is going to start from 1 and end at 10. And let's make use of these three variables in our sample data object defined definition. So I'll replace r.draw.ic underscore account with icons dot random. So instead of like specifying the IC underscore EC ID, it is going to pick a random ID from these three values, and it is going to save that in our sample data variable, sample data object. And similarly for the title, I'll write titles dot random, and it is going to do that. And for the subtext, I'll also do the same, like nums dot random. Now, since nums variable is going to give an integer value, I'll also need to change it to string. So I'll write dot to string. And now, if I'll run my application, let's run it. I'll again start screen sharing. And right here, if you'll notice, the randomization is now present. So I have like sample 1, Google 6, Google 3, and even the icons are changing. So this is how we basically make a very simple adapter class for our Recyclerview. And one thing which I can also display is that for the right now since we attached a linear layout manager, and all of the items are being displayed one below the another, I can also change this to be like a column type list. So I can change the linear layout manager to grid layout manager, and I'll specify like 2 columns for my user interface. And one now, if I'll run it, let's see. Now, if I'm running it, as you can see, I have 2 separate columns, and my data is now being split into 2 sides. This is 1 and this is 2. I can change this to 3. I can run my app again, and now I have 3 different columns. And obviously, since the data is not able to fit in it, it is like showing up as in a weird format. This is how the layout manager affects our display of items. So this was how the basics of a Recyclerview works. So any question? Can you shortly explain sample adapter part of it? Yeah. So in the sample, I'll close this. So in a sample adapter, we first of all created the view holder class. Now I created the view holder class inside my sample adapter because this ensures that my view holder class is only being used in the sample adapter class, and also this improves code readability, since this view holder class is not going to be used anywhere else. So I know that okay, like this sample view holder class is going to be used in sample adapter as it is. But you can also choose to create a separate class file from here and place all of this code inside that particular file. So in my sample view holder, I made a bind function which is accepting the data which is going to be displayed in our item. Then I'm just attaching the data to my item, and for my sample adapter, I added a field to accept the list of data which I want to display. And this particular class is going to extend the Recyclerview.adapter class. We specify the view holder class, and Android Studio then asks us to override these three specific functions. So the first function is going to be get item count, and get item count defines as to the number of items which are going to be displayed. So essentially, if I would change this to 5, so it is only going to display 5 items. So that would mean that if the data contains about like 20 items, but if I just define the get item count to be equal to 5, only the top 5 items would be displayed. This is how the get item count function works. Then the onBind view holder gives us an instance of the inflated layout item, and it also tells us the position as to where that item is going to be used. So this is where we get the data from the list for that specific position, and we bind that data using our bind function to the actual resource layout itself. And the Oncreateviewholder function is called when the Android system needs to make or inflate the actual layout itself. So right here we are getting the parent, we are getting the view type, and we are writing some like return view holder item sample binding.inflate, and that means that we are loading the layout. And this is how we specify the layout inflator and all of the separate variables. So layout inflator.from means that we are creating a layout inflator instance. Parent means that we are just passing the parent in which this particular item is going to be placed, and we don't want this particular item to get merged in the actual parent itself, so we write false here. So that is how the sample adapter code is structured. So that was how Recyclerview works. And do we have like 5 to 6 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Google Meet
Yeah.
will allow us.
So I'll also show you, how to have like dynamic data in your recycler. So I'll change this to linear layout manager again, and I'll remove this. So let's actually add 2 different buttons here. So I'll quickly add 2 different buttons in my layout. So one button here, a second button here. So this, but or let's just have one button for now. That will make things much more easier. So I'll just quickly add a button to my layout, and I want my recycler view to stay on top of the button. Right, so I'll just pass in some ID button, and I'll change the text to be action. Right. So what I'll show you as to how you can add items to your list at runtime. So let's say you already have your data, but you get some like new data from your server or some API or from a database. So how do you exactly add or update the recycler? So I'll show as to how to do that. So right here, I'll use my binding variable to define an action for my button. Like button action dot set on click listener, and this particular code is going to be called whenever I click this button. So right here, what I'll do is I'll add an item to my data list. Data dot add like sample data. Let's say the item needs to be account. The title would be added, and the number is going to be 90. Right. So now we just added an item to our existing data, and right. So now that we have added an item to the data which we want to show, we also need to tell the recycler view and the adapter that we just added an item so that it can also ensure that the new item is being displayed. So for that, we write sample adapter dot notify item inserted, and we need to specify as to what position did we add the item to. Since we just added the item at the last position, so I'll write data dot size -1. That would essentially give us the last position. And again, let me show you as to how you will run this. I'll share my screen, and right here I'll hit on build. So it would now run my application. Now, as you can see, we have an action button here. Oh, yeah. So if I'll click the action button, it is going to add an item, right? So as added, 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 added. So this is right now adding the item at the bottommost position. I can also change this to be added to the top. So I'll write sample data dot add, and I'll specify the index to be 0. So that is going to be the topmost position. And I'll also accordingly change the notify item inserted variable. And now if I'll run this, let's see. So now I have my list of 25 items which I am originally creating, and whenever I press action, the list is going to add an item to the top. Right. So added, added, added. So this is how you can make use of this notify item inserted action to tell the recycler view to add in the item at runtime. And similarly, you can also choose to remove the item as well. So let's say you remove data dot remove at 0. So you just need to remove the item at 0, and accordingly you need to change the notify item inserted to be notify item removed, and you need to specify as to what position the item was removed from. Again, I'll run this, and now whenever I'll hit action, it is going to remove the topmost element. And also Android shows this pretty nice transition to display that the item was removed. So action, 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 action. It is going to remove our items from the list. Right. So this is how you can also like choose to add or remove items at runtime. So those were the basics of Recyclerview, and like this is mostly it. So if I want to input 10 different information rather than using random, so in that case you will just need to change your sample data class or whatever data class you are developing. So right here I just had like 3 different properties, and in your case, if you have like 10 different properties, you can obviously add those 10 specific properties here. And if you are going to take the input from user, you will need to like set up some mechanism like some edit text or some text views to accept the data, and accordingly you need to like read specific text views or edit text to get the data and add to the list accordingly. Right. So that is how you will do it. Whenever I add button, do some work, but when I launch app, my button don't give any response. How can I fix? So most likely you are not calling the notify functionality. Like even if right here, if I would just remove the data, but not call the notify item removed method. So I'll show you what happens. Oh no, it's no emulator. No, 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 no. Yeah, run this on my phone. Right. So now on if I press the action button, it would only remove the item, the topmost item in my data list, but it is not going to identify or tell the adapter notify that the item was removed. So if I would just press action, like see, nothing is going to happen. So essentially, what you need to do is also notify that the item was removed from the list in order to update the user interface. Thank you. I understood. Right. So, any more questions? If anyone wants to ask, it can be like Android related, anything like a recycler related, or anything which you might want to ask. Is notify similar to looping? In what context? Like, what do you mean by looping here?
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. I would like to say that, like you have told us that if I don't call notify, then it would only remove starting item. But when I call notify, it would keep on removing. So that's why I said, is it similar to looping?
I still don't understand. We need to write the notify item remove to also, so what happens is that if you just remove the item from the data, like this is obviously going to remove the item, but we also need to tell the adapter that okay, like we remove this item, so you also need to update your layout, because the adapter does not know, when the item is like the when the data is changing. So we can make all sorts of things, like we can add, remove, even completely change the data which we are having, but the adapter would not understand that by itself. So that is why we need to call like your specific function, like if we have like notify item removed, inserted, reinserted, item changed, in order to also tell the adapter that okay, like this particular item was modified, so you need to change the display accordingly. So I mean, that is how the notify part works.
Okay, so any more doubts, guys? Okay, I think
Well, I guess,
Hardik
yeah.
have covered very nicely all the topic. There are no more doubts.
Well, I guess we can end the session then.
So let me just introduce all the facilitators we are having. Uh, there we have Fariz from Jamia Millia Islamia, and we have Shaswat Mohite from Medicaps University. We have Ankur Singh from BIT Mesra. We have Zanish Hirpara from Dwarkadesh Sanjeevi College of Engineering. And we have our GDSC leads here, Chaitanya Chawla from Delhi Technical Campus. We have already know Hardik Srivastav here as our speaker. We have Mahakdeep Kaur, our GDSC lead, BBSBEC. And yeah, so till now, if anyone have any more doubt in future, if you have any doubt, you can contact us. We are going to share our handles shortly in the chat box. You can contact us, you can contact Hardik, you can contact any one of the list we are going to share. Yeah, I have shared my GDSC community dev link. You can join the chapter, you can contact there also. All the other facilitators will be sharing you all the details to contact, and we expect that you also guys insist to conduct a new session also in future. Like our program will be ending on 10th January, so we will be conducting more sessions as well. And if you guys don't have any doubt, we can just end up here.